April 7th, 2025. This is the Finance and Facilities Committee for the School District of Waukesha. Tanya, can you verify that the meeting has been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, we are now at the section, before I start, Mr. Borowski is excused. And as Mr. Clark, if we could just possibly in the section C discussion items, switch items 3 and 4. We are now at the general business section where there's an opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone who has signed up to speak tonight?
No, we don't.
Okay. Moving forward into our first action items is the approval of minutes. Are there any questions or discussions?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Passes 4-0. The next action item is the approval of vouchers. Were there any questions this month?
There were no questions this month.
Okay. Seeing no questions, I would be looking for a motion.
I would move to approve the monthly vouchers as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Passes 4-0. Our next action item, we are moving past to item number 3 as listed, as we do not yet have the agreements.
Yeah, we'll bring those back in May. We were working on them this afternoon, we just couldn't get it finished, so.
Quick question on that. Does that set the project back at all? Or?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, so the next action item is the North High School Drainage Project easement approval.
Yeah, this easement is for AT&T. They had an existing easement across the north campus, and they're just moving it to reflect the placement of the new drainage ditch. So there's a finalized version of it. There's also a red line version of it. The additions in that red line version are the ones that legal counsel added for us and were agreed upon. And then there's also a map, and Kurt Weebelhaus, who's been helping us with this project, is here to answer any questions you might have related to this easement. But like I said, it's just the new placement of a existing line that had run across our property.
So it's just purely utilities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any questions or discussion?
Just a clarification, this might be a question for Kurt, or maybe it's just a facility use question, but it does look like it moves the easement considerably into useful field space. I don't know if that's a concern or something that we have to keep clear.
There is another easement in that area. With the adjustments that the attorney made on the language of the easement, the way it was originally written, where it came from AT&T, and we had a little more concerned about it restricting what you could do in the future there, but with the adjustments they made in that language, and that it's running parallel to another easement that's there, you won't lose any usable space. It's not an area you would build a building on. The softball field is directly north of there, and it doesn't infringe with that softball field, or if you were to redo that softball field, this easement won't interfere with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? If not, I'd be looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Do you want me to be more specific, or?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the North High School Drainage Project easement approval for AT&T, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Passes 4-0. Moving into our discussion and information items this evening, the first item is a North High School Drainage Project update.
Yeah, just a very quick update. This project was broken down into 2 bid packages, and the results of the second bid package are in, but we don't have like a formal document, but I wanted to update the committee that it looks like compared to budget, and again, our exposure financially was 10% of hard costs related to the project, up to a maximum of $750,000. But I just want to let you know that the bid packages, based on the results the city has given us so far, are about 35 to 40% below the budgeted amount. So I'd hope to give you a final number tonight, but I think it's looking very positive that we could see a number that's substantially lower than what the board had approved as a maximum.
And that maximum, I think, was 750.
Yep.
Cap.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's good. Dr. Piasek.
Just a request as a follow-up, since we won't see this committee meeting for a month, but we will, either we could update it through a packet update.
Like a Friday update.
Or at the board meeting. I don't know if you'll have it by Wednesday, but whatever, whenever you get it, I would appreciate not waiting. Thank you.
Yeah, to date I have a text, so not very glamorous.
Any other questions or discussions? All right, the next discussion items is the 2025-2026 budget development.
Yeah, this is just another one. As the months go by, it's kind of a reminder that we are continuing to work on next year's budget. And what I've been doing is I'm just updating you on some of the key assumptions that we started with and the revisions we've made since that time. So obviously they're busy in Madison, we think, working on another biennial budget. I'm also hearing that we might not get a biennial budget and they'll just roll the existing one forward. So anywhere between that and what ends up really happening is all possible. So, the underlying foundation to us is we've rolled existing legislation forward into the 25-26 school year because it's the best available information we have. So I'll just run down a few of these assumptions and talk a little bit about health insurance. I have some good news on a new PBM agreement. CPI came in at 2.95%, which was about where we had budgeted, very close to where we had budgeted. So we track that throughout the year, and it also shows that our projections tend to be pretty good. Health insurance, you're always fighting that inflationary factor on healthcare. We have a plan in place that would utilize a few tools to get there to make this as close to a zero premium increase as possible. First of all, as I mentioned, we renegotiated our pharmaceutical benefit management, or PBM, contract. These last couple of months we've been working on this, and that new contract with no real service changes is better positioning for us. We think will save us $1.1 million over the next 3 years. The other thing it did, because we really started out thinking, it's time to do an RFP, but we would have to buy out the last year of the contract. So this new agreement with Navitus, who's been our provider and has provided, quite honestly, very good service for us, provides that savings, and we have a free opt-out after this year. So there's no penalty to pay at the end of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a RFP process that's completed. About this time, we'll be presenting hopefully the results of that, but the savings were great. So we're estimating for fiscal year 25-26 between $300,000 and $400,000 savings over our existing contract with Navitus. So we saw that as a win. Reserves, we continue to be in a strong position with reserves. So we're eyeballing, and I should probably back up just a little bit. Our plan year starts in September. So when we look at budget timing, I have about 4 months of claims data that you have to try to extrapolate out over a year, which, as you know, with health insurance, it can swing quickly on you. So we've gone through that process, and now we are trying to get down to a slight premium increase or no increase, because we've held premiums pretty flat for several years now. The plan right now, as we're knocking it around, is to use, or set aside to be used, $800,000 of reserves. Our reserves are in a very healthy position, have been since COVID for sure, and even prior to that, we're pretty strong. But we think this is a good use of these funds. The other thing I would mention, though, is 2 of the last 3 years, we've had this exact same conversation where we've said, let's set aside these reserves, thinking there's a higher probability that we might use them. 1 year we didn't touch them. Claims were good enough because we're self-funded. Our claims are what they are. Harder to project when you do it that way. And then the other year we didn't use the $800,000 we set aside either. So Just because we have this in our planning, it doesn't mean it's going to be expended. If we have a great claims year or a good one, those dollars will just roll forward, or we use just a partial amount of it. So, and then, again, every month's another chapter of new information for us. We hope to come in with a health insurance premium increase between 0 and 1%, somewhere in that range. So, so that's the plan as we have it right now, but the biggest gain for us was that new PBM contract, because that was just signing a better agreement. There's no changes in benefits, people won't even notice that we did it. But it's important that you know. So that's what we have for health insurance. I did meet with our consultant on property liability and workers' compensation. Property insurance is a tough market right now. And our workers' comp, we've had a rough claims year. We normally run very well with workers' comp, but sometimes there's issues. We had one coach at a volleyball game that got hit in the eye socket with a ball, just a fluke thing like that can happen and mess with it. So overall, that package of insurance coverage, property liabilities, workers' comp, we're estimating a 15% increase in those line items.
What's the current amount we budget for?
Good question. That bundle of coverages, we budget about $1.2, $1.3 million. Workers' compensation being the most. But if you know anything about workers' comp in your mod, 1.0 is average, right? And you want a lower score. We've normally run with our mod around 0.75. So we're very low, but then you get this year where you just get this couple three of kind of freakish accidents, and we'll probably be up in the 0.8, 0.9, above average still, but not where we've been.
So, looks like it's about 65,000 additional. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that's the kind of the quick update of things that came up this last month that I thought you'd have some interest. We're busy building the 25-26 budget as we speak. In months ahead, we'll be talking compensation and some other big pieces of the budget as well. But I can answer any questions you have. Otherwise, that's all we had to share tonight.
I think it's interesting that every year we go through this and we go through the same health insurance renewal cycle and the timeline for my day job as we do through the district. And so United Healthcare came back with a 34% premium increase this year. Anthem came back with a 26% premium increase this year. Mercy Healthcare, which is local to Janesville, Madison area, also I think about 15-16%. So when we really start to talk about what we are able to do within our district for our employees and how we're able to keep the costs to the district and to them low, I think is testament to how we manage our money. I would be naive to not bring up Act 10. And at the point with where we know this would completely belly up all of these discussions that we talk about healthcare. And I think our community needs to start to understand what this could mean to our budgeting as we go through all of this and how that would change us. Because right now, the way that we're controlling our costs, it's excellent service, excellent rates, low cost to the employee, and great coverage. And that just, it changes the dynamic. Mr. Wad?
Yeah, and Ms. Clark, correct me if I'm wrong on this, for the benefit of those watching who may not have remembered the whole Act 10 fight and the changes that came through, and I worry sometimes when I see some of the polling around Act 10 that people don't. The big change around health insurance that came through Act 10 was that the districts got considerably more control over the purchase of the health insurance plans that they implemented for the employees, when before that was often controlled outside, or at least through negotiations, right? I think.
Yeah, it was a labor contract agreement to change coverages or deductibles or whatever. All of that went through a bargaining process, which often took months, and oftentimes you would be months into the years, so by the time you did it, the savings had already, a lot of it, you'd lost the opportunity to do. We've kept that in mind. We also keep in mind the value, as Carrie was mentioning, of having a strong benefit package, and the changes we've implemented over the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years have not, everyone has a different lens, in my opinion, haven't been.
My recollection was we were sort of forced to take on the WEAC insurance back before Act 10, is that correct?
Actually, the district had bargained out of
Yeah, okay.
WA and allowed for an RFP process, and they were actually with UHC before Act 10 occurred.
Did we still see significant savings, though, when Act 10 was implemented in our insurance costs?
That I would assume they did. I wasn't here at the time, but I would assume that that savings between that transition to UHC, and again, I don't remember the exact years of it, you certainly gain the savings from half of the retirement system contributions and other benefits that may have been paid. But compared to a district like the one I was in, that change came with Act 10, so we saw more of a larger move in 1 year, where Waukesha, because of bargaining it out, might have spread those savings, so it'd be a little harder to identify. Spread those savings over a couple of years.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? This was good. All right, seeing none, then our next discussion item is moving into the monthly budget report.
So this is a slower time of year for us, but we are, because we're looking forward now to the end of the school year. However, as you will see on the budget chart, we are seeing more of a divide between our budget last year and this year regarding capital objects and non-capital objects. Of course, that's because of I'm using the ESSER funds last year. Other than that, we have our next tax payment in April. And we're just anticipating a strong end to the year, quite honestly. Are there any questions of anything?
Yeah, Ms. Davis, could you just elaborate on when you say we're anticipating a strong finish to the year, kind of what you mean by that?
Yeah, we're meeting budget or exceeding budget in many areas. And so I'm anticipating that, I'm hopeful that will continue throughout the end of the year here.
Looking like we'll be adding to fund balance significantly. I mean, depends what conversation you're having, but a healthy year end. And keep in mind, as we identify that number closer and closer, we'll also be coming back to this committee. We had talked about reserving funds for future curriculum adoptions, and so all that gets rolled into that conversation as well. I've been debating whether to bring that action to reserve or designate those funds before the fiscal year end or wait till after when we know everything's buttoned up in terms of year end. I'm thinking more and more about doing it pre-end of the fiscal year so it's reflected in our financials for June 30th. So, but I'm open to feedback on that as well.
Dr. Piasek?
I was just going to say yes. I think it would be great to have it inside of the fiscal year because we're the state of the state budget and all the other variables that are uncertain. I think having a solid close would be to our advantage. A clean close, I should say.
I'll agendize it in May just for us to talk about it and then come back in June and take action.
Okay. All right, seeing no other discussion items, we are moving then into the district long-range planning.
Yeah, last month we spent a fair amount of time. Last month we spent a fair amount of time talking about the fiscal outlook for the district and what steps should we take. And Dr. Siebert and I have been kind of bringing forward information that kind of leads us, whether it's offers on property or whatever, to kind of identifying the fact that we really need to, in our opinion, develop a plan and a goal and a document to help us make future decisions as we move forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim. We have a very nice, short PowerPoint, but we talked about process, so we're going to lay out a process that we're recommending that we use in the months ahead to accomplish the goal of developing a long-term plan.
All right, well, thanks, Darren. So, first of all, thank you to the committee for being willing to look at this with us. We think it's an important step in our future. We're calling this optimizing our future because we are in a good position as a school district, and a lot of it is because of what we've talked about already tonight, the financial stewardship that this board and boards before have shown, the way we work together administratively and as a board. However, enrollment is not what it used to be. And so we know that. That's not a Waukesha problem. That's not just a Wisconsin problem. That's a nationwide situation. And so, to Dr. Piasek's point, there are a number of different variables that are in play at all times. And when we take matters into our own hands, that's how we know best we can meet the challenges that come with it. So this is what we're going to just walk through with you tonight is a three-step process that we're going to propose to use the calendar year of 2025 to figure out what our future looks like. And so as we talked about last month, we're really looking to create a long-range budget planning process that will be instrumental in helping us guide future decision-making as enrollment continues to decline. And in the bullet points here, we just want to point out that our primary objective has been, will always be, to provide students and families in Waukesha with access to a high-quality education. Everything that we've done over the past few years in terms of guaranteed and viable curriculum, the behavior work, the ongoing investments in facilities, those things are all designed to ensure that the constituents of this community get a high-quality education. We certainly are very proud of the exceptional work of our teachers and district support staff. They're the primary reason that all of those things happen. The magic happens in the classroom every single day. And at this level, we block and plow and pave the way for that to happen, and we put the resources in place to give them the ability to be successful, and they certainly are doing that on a day-in, day-out basis. We want to be in a position that we can continue to do that. And in order to do that, we have to, year over year, look at how do we best deploy the resources that we have available, and how do we then provide that great level of service and opportunity year over year. We also, to my earlier point, and what we talked about in Darren's report, we've long prided ourselves as a district that is very financially solid and practices great financial stewardship to the constituents of our community. That's evidenced by having the lowest mill rate in Waukesha County, among other things. When we look back over the past now 30 years, imagine that West High School is over 30 years old, Summit View is over 30 years old. Those were our last two schools that were built and opened in 1993. Those were to address increases in enrollment, which were projected, and which did peak in 2012, 2013 at just over 13,000 students. Today, though, however, we see our enrollment dropping. It's projected to drop through 2034 based on the studies that we've had done. And we currently hover right around 10,500 students. So as part of this long-range budget planning process, what we propose administratively is that our goal be that we reduce our building capacity by 10 to 15% to be in line with the current enrollment trends. And so as you saw in Darren's report, I mean, we're projecting even for next year 2%. We're projecting that 2% decline year over year over year, and we've been experiencing that since 2012-13. And when I say 10 to 15%, I want to be clear that our initial focus would be in this process looking at our K-8 district footprint. We've talked about this before, and we've talked about it earlier. I mean, we are not alone in this conversation. And so we have a list here of school districts that are continually looking at the same footprint issues that we are. And how many buildings do you need in order to be successful and be lean enough for a successful future? And so going from Green Bay to MPS to Neenah to Racine, most recently Kettle Moraine, districts around us and throughout the state, and many larger districts like us are having these conversations. And we've also talked how this is now hitting higher education, particularly when we see UW Milwaukee at Waukesha going off the books. We've seen Cardinal Stritch in our area. And part of that is we're graduating, and we have been graduating some larger classes. The classes that are replacing them are much, much smaller, and so over time, it's going to look different in the school district of Waukesha and in many other school districts. So with that being said, what we are proposing is a three-phase process that begins here in April and May. In phase one, we're terming as information sharing. And so in that phase, we propose holding public information sessions on our district-wide enrollment and looking at our objectives overall for the calendar year of 2025. I have a slide coming up that'll talk about what that looks like specifically. In phase two, May through October, where we're calling this the gathering input phase. So as a cabinet, we've been working on this for some time. We will bring forward some final plan proposals that would allow us to reduce the district footprint by 10 to 15%, and then have opportunities for both our internal staff and our external community to provide input on those plans that will further inform how we move forward. And then lastly, in phase three, from October to December, then that is our goal to call that the presenting a recommendation phase, in which we would bring a recommendation forward to the Board of Education for your considered approval. So in the phase one information sharing phase, we would have 3 information sharing sessions for staff that start next week, April 14th at Butler, April 15th at West, April 16th at Horning. We would have a 3:15 session at each one for secondary staff and a 4:15 session at each one for elementary staff. And staff members could attend any of those sessions that they chose. We would also then propose having information sharing community sessions, evening sessions, also in those auditoriums, April 22nd at West at 6 o'clock, May 1st at Butler at 6, and May 7th at Horning at 6. And in the information sharing meetings, we would have a slide deck that's more robust than this, that would look at our enrollment trends, look at how those trends impact school funding and overall finances, talk about the steps we've taken already, which we've taken many, to address our enrollment trends, and then overview the next steps in the process being the phase 2 and phase 3 aspects of the plan I just described. So again, just as a high-level overview for you, April and May are the
Dr.
public...
Siebert, can I just pause you real quick?
Yes.
Just because I see Mr. Waugh taking notes frantically. I just want to make sure that this will be shared with us after.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, but for sure. And all of this, what our plan is to have an optimizing our future section of our website, where Mr. Clark will put this in board docs under F&F after we present it. It'll then go on the website along tomorrow with our enrollment studies that we've had done, so
Perfect.
people
Sorry to
can
interrupt.
start to see those pieces. No problem. So we start with the information sharing. We then go into the gathering input May through October. We're talking about those final plan proposals. And then by the end of the calendar year, talking about presenting a recommendation to the board. I should also mention, in our plan, no changes would be made until the beginning of the 26-27 school year. So we'd be using the rest of this calendar year to get to a point where we're asking for your approval of a particular plan after a full vetting across our internal and external constituents, and then taking some time to get that ready to start with the 26-27 school year. So some final thoughts on this proposal. We're looking to create a plan that helps us ultimately be ready for what we know is coming, which is a continual decline in enrollment. As we've said earlier, we're not alone in facing this, and when you take matters into your own hands, you can best prepare and best plan for a successful future. Number 3, we're looking to reduce the building capacity by 10 to 15% This will ensure that we can have long-term sustainability in the school district of Waukesha, looking first at our K-8 schools and that footprint. And we're really proposing using the entire calendar year of 2025 to engage the staff and engage the community and engage the board in this important work. So, with that being said, Mr. Clark and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have, and we appreciate your willingness to consider this process.
I think I will kick it off then. Jim and Cabinet, I appreciate all the work that has gone into this point. Obviously, a lot of the feedback that we get from our community is understanding that we are in a declining enrollment environment. We can't change that. There isn't an amount of programming or structure or advancements that is going to change the fact that birth rates are declining, and that's everywhere, no matter how you push that. And so taking the strategic approach to be able to say, we have to take steps to shrink our operational fixed costs where we can, because our focus is always going to be on the students and the education that we're providing. And hearing that is a further commitment that I hear from you, from the cabinet, and obviously the board supports the district with our focus on that. I'm encouraged by the amount of listening sessions for both our staff as well as gathering impact and feedback from our community. I think those are critical and valuable, and that is then going to be pulled into further resources that comes up with a recommendation for a decision that ultimately is not going to be put in place for quite some time, or enough lead time that allows us to be able to use our diligence to be able to do this effectively and accurately. And so I think this is a great strategy and sounding board and start to a process that is definitely needed and time for us to do before it's too late, so that we can continue the work that we're doing. Mr. Wad.
Yeah, just a logistical question here. For the community listening sessions, since they will be remote from the boardroom, they'll be at West Butler and Herning, can we ensure that we'll be able to at least record those listening sessions for those community members who may not be able to attend, and make them available on our YouTube channel?
Yes, that is our goal. So the technology department is willing to engage in that.
Good. Yeah, I don't know that I want to necessarily recommend them be live, because I wouldn't want to discourage people from attending in person and asking questions and providing feedback. But I do think that, particularly given the time, anything we can do to help make sure that people who can attend have access to that information would be important. So, thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Mr. Zenobia.
Thank you. So I know you had mentioned, had shown a few other districts up there, and of course, we know declining enrollment has continued to be an issue for everyone everywhere. Has the administration or you personally, Dr. Siebert, in talking with other districts, have you seen anyone else taking kind of the same approach as to, what are we going to do in the next year or two? Not that necessarily we would want to follow what they're doing, but I'm just kind of curious as to, knowing that the problem is out there, what are other districts doing now? Mm-hmm. If anything, I know it's anecdotal, if you could share anything in that regard, I'd be curious.
Yeah, sure. I think between Mr. Clark and I, we try to follow various other districts and watch their processes and watch how they look at things. In many cases, there are some districts that are just closing things. There are many districts that are pairing a referendum with closing. In our case, our recommendation is that we are going to be debt-free in 2026, paying off a 2018 referendum at a rapid pace. We think being debt-free is a great thing, and that we take into consideration the reduction of the footprint without a referendum, and that would be the way that we would approach this. But we'd have watched, Mr. Zenobia, a number of these different districts. There's no one way that they've all done it, but most of them, I would say, engage the community in some way, shape, or fashion, similarly to we were proposing. And ultimately, it's a combination of internal and external stakeholders that provide input that ultimately help shape and form where it is that we go. Mr. Clark, anything you'd add?
The only thing I'd add to that list is, we didn't spend weeks researching this. These were kind of word-of-mouth districts that we've identified. We didn't go all out, because there's more out there who are having the same conversations, and we're just didn't read the right news article or whatever at the right time. But like Dr. Siebert said, there's every district's unique, and some people are merging what maybe was a elementary, middle school, high school, and they're going to referendum to go into one whole campus, or all kinds of different things. But we've talked about this before, and I'll just echo what Jim mentioned. We just administratively think we have a lot of due diligence to do before we come to you to ask the taxpayers for any sort of financial assistance.
Dr. Piasek?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I'm just thinking back to probably 2016, 17, when there was already conversation about structural deficit, because we were starting to see that 1.5% to 2.5% enrollment decline, and that's just kind of trended with birth rate and what we're seeing in the environment. And I think the aging out of the city. So if I'm looking at this correctly, and I really appreciate what you both have just said about, not wanting to seek incremental operating dollars until we've kind of ironed out what the physical structural opportunities are. We at least would have to chase the declining enrollment rate with increased operating if we were to maintain, is my understanding, in addition to the inflationary cost, just the increased cost of doing business. And as we kind of saw with the Whittier-Hadfield situation, as we were getting to the point before we merged them, the inefficiency costs of having staff kind of split between buildings was one of the motivating factors for bringing those together. So if I think about just the overall, what would it cost to maintain status quo, as much as I want to ask that question, I think maybe I'm answering my own question, but I think what I perceive is that it's not necessarily a sustainable solution to just throw more operating dollars at it, because the capacity in those buildings, costs go up, and buildings, to maintain those buildings at low capacity is somewhat irresponsible. But I think it's figuring out what that sweet spot is, which is kind of my next question. When you say capacity, and you've educated us over the years, and that reduction of 10 to 15%, are we looking at maximum building capacity, useful building capacity? I'm guessing that'll come out in some of your presentations, but what does that refer to?
Well, when the capacity study was completed, it assumed that well, first of all, what we did is we identified actual classrooms, spaces that were designed to hold, on average, 25 kids or whatever number. We didn't go into libraries, we didn't go into pull-out spaces, so we really identified, this was a 3-section school, an elementary school. But then for the secondary schools, I believe it was a 70% utilization, meaning not every classroom was used every period of the day. And then at the elementaries, obviously, those buildings, they don't have the flow of the students. And we assumed class sizes there that ranged at the lower level, I want to say like 21 per kid, up to 25 when you got to like 4th and 5th grade. And that's how we came up with this number of capacity. So by no means are we assuming 35 kids in every classroom, and every room that has 4 walls and a door is going to have kids in there. I think it was a pretty fair, and we actually walked the buildings to see where instruction was taking place. It wasn't just looking at blueprints. So I think it's a very fair vision of what people expect for those buildings being used for.
I would just add, Dr. Piasek, that even with a 10 to 15% reduction, we will still have room if our enrollment would swell at some particular point. We're also not within that 10 to 15% considering this building or Pleasant Hill, which both could be reconverted into schools should we need them. So we would still have space, and we will, in our presentation that we'll do, the larger presentation, show that throughout the years, as we've right-sized our staffing to align with our student enrollment, our average class size has not spiked, right? So we're being efficient in trying to right-size our staffing to right-size the enrollment already. Now our goal is to right-size the buildings to fit that package.
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, I really appreciate you calling that out, Dr. Sieber, because I saw a lot of speculation in, the public conversation contemplating, some of the long-term planning challenges we'd have with the district, that any plan that attempted to reduce footprint or better utilize our facilities automatically meant a reduction in staff, an increase in class sizes. But the reality is, the pace of enrollment declines, that's not going to change as a result of us better utilizing our footprint, right? I mean, we're still gonna try to maintain the same class sizes we have today, right? Which, yes, as enrollment goes down, the need for staff decreases. That's just obvious. But this isn't gonna result in significant layoffs if we have to repurpose some of our facilities to use them more efficiently. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So, every year when we're balancing the budget, and we've talked about it in here, we're balancing the $3 to $4 million structural deficit, and that's done in large part due to declining enrollment and then adjusting the size of our staff to meet that. So we're doing that through, generally speaking, retirements and natural attrition. And so the goal here is not to reduce significant amounts of staff. Can we promise that there won't be some staff reductions within this process? No, there could be. But overall, it's trying to be more efficient by having fewer buildings to take care of, which is more cost-effective for us. And because of the work that we've done over the past few years, we can guarantee high levels of reliability, right? We have excellent curriculum now. We have solid resources to support that. We have great professional development. We have ongoing behavioral work. And we have done, as an example, last summer, significant work to update our facilities. And we're not worried about being able to have great education like in my first slide. It's just a matter of how do we do that most effectively, and our thought is we do that in a more condensed building size district.
If I could just follow up, I completely agree with you, and I think the way that I always look at this is the longer we keep our footprint the size that it is, while the number of students inside of it decline, the more the dollars we're spending are going to just pay for empty space. The more we're paying for air, instead of directing those funds directly to the education of the students that are in the building. So I applaud what you're all looking at doing. I look forward to watching the plans come forward, gathering the input from the community and seeing what our staff have to say. But this is certainly something that is in the best interest of this district and in our taxpayers, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it unfolds in the coming months.
Okay, I don't see any other suggestions. Thank you. I think this was really good. And I echoing, right, our number one job is education, and it's pupil and head count drives everything that we've done. And to this point, we've driven and managed, and every school district should be doing this, is you're managing everything too. So it's curriculum, staffing, and infrastructure based on pupil. And so it looks like for us, this last phase is really just the fixed infrastructure that we need to take a look at while we're still doing all of the great things that we have been doing to date. So I echo Mr. Wad. I look forward to where we're going.
So if I might, just to wrap it up. So the next step with this committee then would be, we'll come back in May. We'll report out on how the information sessions went. And then we'll have a similar presentation that will outline with more specificity what Phase 2 looks like, which is the gathering input phase. So similarly, like you have in this one with some dates and different concepts, we'll have that all articulated to present in May. And then we'll have ongoing conversation at this committee and with the full board throughout the summer as that input is gathered, leading into the fall.
Sounds good. All right, moving into other business, are there any recommendations for future committee meetings? Mr. Wad?
Yeah, I'm wondering, and I guess I'm looking for feedback here from you, Mr. Clark, or you, Dr. Siebert. I think we all are aware there is a case winding its way through the appellate system and is probably headed for the Wisconsin Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of Act 10. We've already touched on it a little bit here tonight. I think based on the outcome of elections, the likelihood that that could be overturned is probably significantly higher today than it was last week. I'm wondering if there's any information that you can bring forward to us that either gives us an update on where those suits are at, what some of the proposed remedies are being requested by the suing party. And the reality is, with all that we're talking about here with our future utilization and long-term planning, it assumes a continuation of a world without Act 10 being reversed. And I think we need to have an understanding as a board what it may look like to us and what the potential financial implications of that are, as we're at the same time running this parallel track of trying to plan in a world that is that exists because Act 10 was passed in the first place. And
Mr. Wad?
Yes, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, but we're not agendized
I'm
to really
sorry.
discuss this, so
I
I understand what you're asking
Yeah,
for.
thank you.
We can take that as a action to look at. All right, seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.